Welcome back to the 10-second Runoff powered by Culture Media with your host, Joe Mitchell, producer, Magic Mike Ishiaza. Alec Escade will be back for the second show of the week. Last week we covered Oregon, Washington, Utah, and then got into some of the news. Well, since we've been here, we had the first AP poll of the season. The preseason poll came out, so we're definitely got to get into that. And we're probably just going to spend the majority of the show talking about that. We're going to get into who's too high, who's too low, and then which games in the first 2 weeks could potentially have early playoff implications. And I think there's more than we expected.
Yeah, there's definitely way more. I mean, that's just what happens every year. Is these games are played in week 1 and week 2, and you look back on the season and go, oh, well, if we won that game, if we beat that team, if we were at the end of the season, we would have beat them. But
yeah. Let's get into the AP poll here. So coming in at number 1 is Georgia. I think we pretty much expected that.
Yeah, for sure.
Whenever the betting odds, whenever they opened up, Ohio State was the favorite. Was the number had the best odds to win the national championship, like day 1 when they released, which I think took a lot of people by surprise. But Georgia comes in as number 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, Bama 4, LSU 5. Any surprises there?
I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. I really don't have any complaints saying anybody's too high or too low with this top 5. I mean, I do think it's a little bit crazy to think that if this is the college football playoff, we have 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten, and then SEC the first one out. Yeah, at 5.
Yeah, that's. I clearly don't think it ends out that way.
Yeah,
ends up that way, but I think if you're just looking at teams, this. I don't necessarily disagree here. This is the lowest preseason ranking that Alabama's had since 2009 when they were number 5 preseason.
That's saying something.
They've been 1 through 3 for the last 12
insane.
years, 13 years. Yeah, dude, that's unbelievable.
Imagine being number 4 and being like, oh, this is the lowest we've ever been, and that's still like technically in the playoff if that's where they ended.
Yeah. LSU at 5 is a little bit interesting. There's not too many complaints there, but they were a 4-loss team last year. We'll get into all this. 6 to 10, USC at 6, Penn State at 7. So that's that third Big Ten team there. Mm-hmm. Florida State at 8, Clemson at 9, Washington at 10. I'm a little interested to see Washington at 10 over Utah or Oregon at this point, but if you watch this show, you know I agree.
You're the biggest Washington supporter.
Yeah, I mean I'm not a fan of Washington, but I believe in them. Yeah,
you believe in what they're doing. You think they're a good team.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree here, but it's interesting to see this in the AP poll. 11 to 15, Texas, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Utah, and Oregon. So you do see Utah and Oregon come in there. Texas at 11, we could talk about in a second. At 16 through 20, Kansas State, TCU, Oregon State, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma. Any thoughts here?
I mean, once you get to I feel like once you get to the back half after 15, it's kind of like, I mean, not saying it doesn't matter because it does. All top 25 teams do matter. But I feel like once you get to the 16 to 20 range, then it's kind of like you could throw almost any school in there right now, especially right now, and I'd just be like, okay, yeah, I could see that. I don't think anybody's too high or too low here necessarily.
Well, let me just remind you that Kansas State and TCU played for the Big 12 championship last year, and neither one of them are top 15.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's interesting.
That's funny.
Oregon State at 18. Like I said, they had the best defense in the Pac-12 last year. They add DJ Uiagalelei. Interesting. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin at 19. I think that one's just like they're going to run the hell out of the ball. They could be really good if Luke Fickell can figure it out in year 1, but who knows? Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. They got to figure out their defense, but I think that's coming right along. 21 through 25, you got North Carolina, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tulane, and Iowa.
Yeah.
So this is tricky. I think with 21 here, North Carolina, I think that's just Drake May. You know what I mean? Their defense really isn't all that great. They lost Josh Downs at receiver, and they still have athletes, but I think if North Carolina is going to finish in the top 15, it's got to be
Drake May.
Yeah, it's got to be Drake May. Ole Miss at 22. Again, I think this is just a quarterback scenario. They have a three-way competition over there, and they have 3 really good quarterbacks. But I think you're looking at Jackson Dart or Spencer Sanders. And I'm leaning Jackson Dart right now, but I don't really entirely know. This is interesting. I think they're going to have a good defense. Quinshon Judkins is going to be one of the best running backs in college football, in my opinion. And then you go to Texas A&M. They didn't make a bowl last year, but they upset some pretty good teams. They took Alabama to the wire. Interesting. Tulane at 24. let's get into this. So who's too high and who's too low?
Looking at it, the one team that sticks out to me is Texas. I know every year there's always hype about Texas going into the season. Is Texas back? That's always the big joke that people always say. I don't think they are. That could just be me personally. I could just be a hater of them because I think their fans are a bit obnoxious. Sorry, Texas fans.
Don't be sorry. If you think they're obnoxious, don't apologize.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't think y'all are obnoxious, but
I've met.
I'll let Mikey wear that.
But yeah, I mean, looking at it, I really can't complain too much with what they did. I think this is a good ranking. And again, it's preseason. So is it going to end like this? 100% no. If it does, then that'll be crazy. I don't think that's ever happened, has it? Where like a top 5 ends up being the same as preseason?
Oh,
Probably.
dude, I wouldn't imagine, but with the amount of seasons, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, Texas is interesting at 11. They're pretty unproven on defense. I personally believe in Quinn Ewers. I saw there was a report last week saying there could be a quarterback competition between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. I don't believe there is. Quinn Ewers is the guy. And, I think he's going to be solid, but he's coming off a par to subpar season. He didn't have he was injured a lot of the year, didn't break records or anything, didn't set the world on fire at the quarterback position. But I think he comes back as a leader, and this really propels this team forward. They have great pass catchers at tight end, wide receiver, all that kind of stuff. So in the Big 12, I think we haven't seen it, I want to say since 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, where Texas and Oklahoma played for the Big 12 championship. I think we could potentially see that this year. So I like Texas's chances. Do I think they finish top 5? No. But I could see them just a tick higher than 11 at the end of the year.
I see that.
Alabama, are they too high? I know we said this is their lowest ranking since 2009. Are you think they're too high?
I mean, with Alabama, you can never count them out. I know that there's all the things going on, that they don't have a quarterback right now, and there's a bunch of questions surrounding the team.
They have a quarterback. The conversation is it going to be Jalen Milroe or Tyler Buchner?
That's what I mean. They don't know who their starting quarterback's going to be.
I think a lot of people were leaning Tyler Buchner after the transfer happened, and working up to this point. But I think in fall camp, Jalen Milroe is kind of solidifying himself as that guy, and he may fit their scheme better if they're going to be a run-heavy offense. I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe at this point. I said Tyler Buchner before, but I think now I'm comfortable saying I feel good about it being Jalen Milroe. And if it is, I don't know why Alabama would be any lower.
Yeah,
they're the most talented team in the country, and it's not particularly close.
They're the Alabama Crimson Tide. There always will be.
Georgia's making a strong push for that in the last couple of years, but
Alabama's still here though.
They're still here. And so, like I said, they're the most talented team in the country. It's not particularly close. I think if Jalen Milroe can be lead with his feet type of quarterback, and that's not what they're going to ask him to do, but he just fits that scheme better. Look, man, Jace McClendon is no joke at running back. They got guys at running back. Justice Haynes, rather. Great. They got talent all over the field. Defensively, they're going to be great. Offensive line, wide receivers, they're going to be great.
They got some dogs.
I think the question is just the quarterback. And if Jalen Milroe or Tyler Buchner or whoever it is, or Ty Simpson, again, I think it's Jalen Milroe. But if he can just step up and fill that one gap, it's a championship contender.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that with Georgia, right? I mean, Stetson Bennett, good quarterback. Is he a great quarterback? No. Is he going to start in the NFL? Probably not. But you take a guy who can just get the job done and you just plug him on a team like that. I mean, I'm not saying anybody can do it because I'm not disrespecting anybody that.
I'm with you, but with Stetson Bennett, so he wasn't a super flashy quarterback. He wasn't a big time recruit out of high school. But you're talking about statistically one of the best quarterbacks in Georgia history.
And no disrespect to Stetson Bennett, I'm not saying anything bad about him. I think he won 2 national championships in college. Like, that's insane. But I'm just saying, like you said, he wasn't flashy. He didn't have a bunch of headlines on him and stuff like that. And I think with Alabama, if they have a guy like that this year who just steps in, gets the job done, makes the easy plays, makes the smart plays, I think that's all they need. Mm-hmm. They don't need a guy who's going to launch the ball 90 yards. They don't need a guy who's going to go out there and make 11 guys miss on his feet. They just need someone who can step in and get the job done. And will those plays come? Yeah, they always do. I mean, you always get a couple of those crazy highlights, but you don't need that every game.
Yeah. The way I look at it is Nick Saban said he's going back to that smash mouth type football. So you look at the seasons where they were running that primarily and successfully. Well, their quarterback was Greg McElroy and AJ McCarron. So, and nothing against those guys, but they didn't have long NFL careers. You know what I mean? If Jalen Milroe can just be equivalent to what they were,
Yeah.
they're in there.
That's all they need.
They're right back in the mix. Our USC is another team. They come in at number 6. I think you're looking at Caleb Williams and Brendan Rice here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the quarterback wide receiver duo, and that's kind of where I'm at there. The defense had a bunch of turnovers. I don't like them all the way up at 6. I wouldn't have put them there. Hell, I predict them to have 3 losses this year in the regular season. So that might be a little bit of a stretch. They may not lose 3 games in the regular season. But my point is if you're going to tell me they're ranked this high because the defense had a bunch of transfers and the defense is going to be more solid this year, I've been hearing everyone say that, not necessarily about USC, but about Alex Grinch, whether it was at Oklahoma or USC, for the last 3 years. Hadn't happened. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying Alex Grinch can't be successful as a defensive coordinator, but until it happens, I'm not comfortable putting them anywhere near 6.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's where I'm at. And do I think they have potential to go out and be the best team in the Pac-12 and potentially win it? The potential's there. Yeah.
I mean, if you got the best quarterback in the country, you can make anything happen. It's just you got to have a couple plays swing your way. You got to have the defense step up a little bit. But I mean, I'm not mad at having them at 6. I mean, I could see them anywhere between, I would say, the 6 to 10 range. I'd say that's where I would rank them. But I mean, I'm not mad at having them at 6. I know you would probably have Washington above them because we were talking about how you're huge on Washington this year.
I would have them and Washington very close together. I would probably have Utah above them.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a couple teams that we talked about who are too high. Who's too low? Well, I'll just jump off.
Who do you
I
think
just said Utah.
Yeah.
I just said I'd have Utah above them. So they're back-to-back conference champions, and they beat USC twice last year. They lose Dalton Kincaid. I get it. Great tight end. Hey, they're bringing back Brant Keithy at the same position.
Yeah.
The same position. Mind you.
Who was a starter before.
Started Kincaid. Over Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
He's in his 5th, maybe his 6th year. He's in his 947th year of college football. But this dude is real. He's got a couple all-conference honors under his belt. He's going to be solid. He's the same tight end as Dalton Kincaid as far as I'm concerned. Utah's not going to take a step back offensively. They bring back Micah Pittman, or not bring back. They bring in Micah Pittman from the transfer portal. Yeah, dude. I don't understand. You look at that. You look at the Utah team that put up, 50 or 49, 50 points on USC in the regular season last year. So got in a shootout with them and won, and then went to the conference championship and just manhandled them.
Yeah.
They got down early, fought their way back, and just kind of like gave them the stiff arm in the second half and was like, all right, we're done here. We're going to go ahead and take this title. I don't understand how they can be so much lower than USC in the preseason poll.
I think part of that is probably just with media and media markets and stuff, and they want to put the bigger market teams higher. But if we're talking statistically, then I wouldn't doubt having Utah above USC. Yeah, from what you're saying.
Yeah. Another team that could potentially be too low, I think A&M. A&M's at 23.
Okay. Why do you think that?
I know they missed a bowl game last year. I get all that. The reason that I think they're at 23 is because there's just the question mark of, is Jimbo going to turn over the offense to Bobby Petrino?
Right.
I think that's the question. Because if he turns over the offense to Bobby Petrino and that's his offense to run with all the talent on it, all of the big-time recruits that they got, they're going to be solid. They're going to be a top 25 offense in the country, in my opinion. If he does that, if he hands it over to Petrino, they're going to be a top 25, top 30 offense in the country. And the defense is one of the best already. Mm-hmm. So how they're 23 and lower than Ole Miss and North Carolina and Oklahoma, and yeah, I mean, there's some teams in here that I'm like, how? And now, granted, this is the same Texas A&M team that they lost Devin A-Chain, they lost a couple guys, I get it, but this is the same Texas A&M team for the most part that was ranked 6th in the country going into last season.
That's crazy. Dropping all the way from 6 down to 23. I mean, I know they had definitely not a great year. Definitely not up to what they were looking for. But I don't know. I feel like A&M definitely has to prove themselves, and I think if they do turn the offense over, like you're saying, then they could have potential to be up there. But I feel like right now, where they sit, I think 23 is fine for them. I don't think that they're too low or too high.
I feel like the 23 is based off of feeling, though.
Yeah.
I feel like it's based off a feeling of disrespect. I don't know what it is, but a lot of the people who had Texas A&M so high last year, I think rightly had them there, and it wasn't their fault for putting Texas A&M there. I think it was Jimbo Fisher's fault for being so bad with the talent that he had. Just brutally honest.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of them are like, Texas A&M, I mean, why should I believe in Jimbo Fisher right now? And I think they went and got Bobby Petrino, and if he can do his role as the offensive coordinator, which he's done before at plenty other schools, including Arkansas, then they'll finish the year up there closer to the top 15. Who else, man? Who else? Oregon State's pretty low. They're at 18. I don't know if I would have them any higher, but I don't know if I'd have them any higher than 18, but they're going to have one of the best defenses in the Pac-12. Like I said, they bring in DJ Uiagalelei. If he can get comfortable in that offense, then they're going to be dangerous in the Pac-12. I'm not predicting them to be in the conference championship or win it, but let's not forget that last year it was a three-way tie or a four-way tie between Utah, Oregon State, Oregon, and Washington. Yeah, it was a four-way tie. All teams who were 9-3. Oregon State got that last win against Oregon to even them up there, and then Utah obviously. I think it went down to like the fourth metric. It was like.
That's crazy.
Yeah, points differential or something. So Utah went to the Pac-12 championship. But Oregon State's not a team to sleep on. Okay. Early playoff implications. This is just the first 2 weeks. We're not going to like get heavy into these games because we'll do that as the season gets closer, or as those weeks come up. But clearly in week 1, you're going to get number 5 LSU versus number 8 Florida State. This game's being played in Orlando. If you're Florida State and you get this win, the path looks really clear for you.
Yeah.
If you're Florida State and you get this win, that's going to be the second most difficult team, or that may be the most difficult team you play, but their two hardest games are LSU and Clemson. And really, if they beat LSU, they can afford to split Clemson. They can lose to Clemson as long as they win out.
Yeah.
And they'll be favored in the rest of their games. So let's say they lose to LSU, they win every other game but Clemson. Well, they get another shot at Clemson.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So there's a very clear path for Florida State. If they can get that week 1 win, then there's a very clear path to the playoff for them. LSU, it's a little more tricky. I think this game is much more important for LSU to win.
For sure.
Because if LSU beats Florida State, they still got to go to Alabama, which is a very losable game.
For sure.
And then let's say LSU wins the SEC West, they're still likely going to have to play Georgia and Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we've never seen a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. LSU cannot afford to lose week 1.
Yeah.
If their goal is the college football playoff, which of course it is, it's everybody's goal. But if they're going to make it to the college football playoff, losing week 1 is not an option in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that game means more to LSU this year, especially after what happened last year.
Yeah.
And I'm sure those guys in the locker room are taking this one really personally. I'm sure that they have this game circled on the calendar and they've been talking about it. Because losing that game last year in heartbreaking fashion, that's just – and that basically – not saying it decided the season for them, but in a way, like I was saying before, if we went back and we're like, oh, if we went back and we won this game at this time, blah, 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 who knows what would have happened? Because even if we won that – LSU won that game, then the whole season changes because, now instead of being 0-1, you're 1-0. I think that just changes mindset and mentality. I think that's a big thing. I know a lot of people don't really necessarily think that, but I think starting off 1-0 and then you go win all these other games before your big games in the middle and back half of the season, I think that's huge.
Yeah, but you're saying that as if LSU didn't win the SEC West last year.
No, I know that.
Their mindset didn't take a huge blow.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I think the bigger game or the most important loss for LSU last year was Texas A&M.
Oh, well,
week 12.
Yeah.
That's a game they were ranked 5th at the time and got manhandled.
Yeah.
The score wasn't horrible, but they were never ever in control of the game.
It was an ugly game for them.
Yeah. And that, like I said, they were ranked 5th, so they would have gone into the SEC championship at that time versus Georgia with a chance to be the first 2-loss team in the college football playoff. I mean, granted, they wouldn't have beaten Georgia.
Yeah.
But that was the scenario, and then they lost. They lost to Texas A&M at that time, and that was that shut it down for them.
Brutal.
Okay, another game, week 1, North Carolina at South Carolina. So North Carolina, this one's not. It doesn't have as much playoff implications. Obviously, the first one was 2 top 10 teams. This is 21 versus unranked. But the reason I marked this one is North Carolina does have a chance. They have the offense and one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They have a chance to get back to that ACC championship. And I know here's the problem, right? Getting to the ACC championship is only indicative of their ACC schedule. So this game does not matter in terms of their route to the ACC championship. But if they get to the ACC championship as a 1 or 2 loss team, now we have to start talking about them as, okay, can they get to the playoff? If they lose to South Carolina week 1, no.
Yeah.
It'll be the same scenario as North Carolina going to the ACC championship last year and having no shot. So I think this is an important one for them. And South Carolina is a team that very well can beat them. Who would you take in that game, UNC or South Carolina?
I feel like this is one of those games that I know UNC is ranked higher, but I wouldn't be shocked if South Carolina upsets them.
No, yeah. I think I'm going to take South Carolina to upset them.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be an interesting game to watch for sure. But I think I would take South Carolina as well.
Yeah. Okay, number 14, Utah at Baylor. This is week 2. So the first 2 were really kind of the only ones that could potentially have playoff implications in week 1. But week 2, we got a couple. So Utah at Baylor. I think Utah should win this one in grand fashion. Like they should. But I don't think Baylor's going to be nearly as bad as they were last year. I think they just had a really down year, and I think they're going to be back in the mix. They won. Yeah, they won the Big 12 the year prior, and then just fell off. But Utah, again, back-to-back conference championships. The reason they haven't made the playoff is because they haven't been able to maintain their schedule all the way through. They've won the conference back-to-back times, but they can't. They haven't found a way to get there with only one loss. I think this is one of those games that if they're gonna have a shot at the playoff down the stretch, you gotta win games like this.
Yeah.
So this will be an interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's one of those games where, like you're saying, Utah should win this game, but you wouldn't be shocked if Baylor comes around and surprises them, huh?
Yeah, I would be shocked. But I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, like it's not too far out the window.
Yeah. Okay, and then the fourth game I want to talk about. So we have 3 that we're going to talk about in week 2. This is the second one. Number 22, Ole Miss at number 24, Tulane. I think Ole Miss is going to be a heavy favorite here, or at least probably should be. But if you're Tulane and you can pull off a win at home against Ole Miss,
huge,
because that is the most difficult opponent you'll play all year. Let's see. Let's look at
their schedule.
Yeah, pull up Tulane's schedule. I mean, they're in the athletic conference, the American Athletic. They're not going to play another ranked team for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, I don't think they do. So they play South Alabama week 1.
Yep.
Ole Miss, Southern Miss, Nichols, UAB, Memphis, North Texas, Rice, East Carolina, Tulsa, Florida Atlantic, and UTSA. So yeah, that's the hardest game, and it's not even close.
It's not close. So I think Ole Miss will be a heavy favorite here, but if Tulane can find a way to beat Ole Miss, same way they beat Kansas State last year, like they're in USC in the bowl game. Like Tulane is no scrub. They're not Power 5. They don't recruit at the same level as SEC schools or USC for that matter, or Kansas State even. But they're a well-coached team who can go out there and find a win. If they can do that and they beat Ole Miss, we may have to start talking about a potential Group of 5 playoff contender.
No.
I don't think they would be worthy of being in the playoff. I don't think they're one of the 4 best teams in college football. But if we get to the end of the season and they're 12-0 with a win over Ole Miss,
you have to have them in the conversation.
They have to be in the conversation. Hey, look, was Cincinnati deserving of being a top 4 team in the country when they went? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. It's I mean, there's not much you could really say. I mean, they have to be in the conversation. Yeah,
if they go 11-1 with a loss to Ole Miss or to anybody else for that matter, they're not in.
Yeah.
But if they go 12-0 with a win over Ole Miss, they're whatever you feel about them, they're in the conversation.
Yeah, they have to be.
Yeah.
That's like being undefeated and beating another. I assume Ole Miss will still be ranked at that time. Like
Yeah, week 2.
So if you beat your one ranked opponent, and then I feel like they also need to win all their games pretty
I don't feel like
handily.
they can squeak by.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have last one. This is the one everybody's going to watch in week 2, 11 Texas at number 4 Alabama. You'll find out if Texas is back in this game.
Oh, for sure.
Like you'll know. Last year, actually I say that, but you won't necessarily know because last year that game went down to the wire and then Texas ended up falling off late in the year.
They weren't back.
But can you imagine what would happen if 11 Texas finds a way to beat Alabama at Alabama?
That would be wild.
What the media would do with that?
Oh, you imagine all the memes that you would see on Instagram and stuff? All that stuff.
I don't even mean that.
I know you don't mean that, but I mean that. You know how much stuff you're going to see? Alabama will never hear the end of it if Texas wins that game.
But also, so not only that, but I think the problem with that game is it's not a conference game too. So Alabama could, in theory, lose this game, win the rest of their schedule, and potentially see Texas again in the playoff.
Yeah.
Which could be real interesting. And not to mention, Texas is coming to the SEC in 2024.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah, so this will be the last time for the foreseeable future that Alabama and Texas play as non-conference opponents, which is interesting. It's really interesting. I think this is going to be a good game. I do think Alabama wins. I do think Alabama wins at home. Playing in Bryant-Denny is a little bit different. I think just Alabama's defense is going to be too much for them, but Texas has the playmakers to go out there and score. If Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner, whoever it ends up being, if they can't be firing on all cylinders by week 2, they could be in trouble. But I'm going to take Alabama to win, but there's a path for Texas.
Right.
Yeah, that one's going to have big playoff implications because, again, I think this is the hardest opponent Texas plays. Now, granted, they play in a Power 5 conference. They're going to have tough games all year. But this is probably this is the hardest opponent they'll play all year. And if they can find a win here, there's a decent shot. You could see them there's a decent shot. You can see them in the Big 12 championship and potentially the playoff.
There's a shot they could be back if they win this game.
I'm not gonna definitively say they're back, but if they win this game, you'll give them the B. They're you know
the horns won't be down. They'll be about like here.
Yeah.
You'll never catch me doing them up though.
Yeah.
Not me.
All right, that's all we got for this one. Just wanted to touch on that AP poll. We're gonna get into what teams do we have for this coming episode. Let's see that we're gonna break down. We have. Yeah, we're going to get into TCU, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. So
interesting stuff.
Yeah,
talk about Drake May.
A couple middle of the pack teams with high ceilings. So we're going to get into them. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, do all that kind of stuff. Thank you.